Hello YouTube, Dave here again, back with another recent gaming story. So the last one that I talked about was an experience running first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, but I'm also running a bi-weekly homebrew game, or home game, for D&D 5th edition, going through the starter set and the Lost Mine of Phandelver. It's an adventure that I never really got to run in its entirety all the way through. So I thought the story that I would tell here would actually be the most recent adventure, the most recent session. But if you want to hear about the player character's exploits leading from the very beginning, the very first session, through to this most recent one, let me know in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to go over it, because there was some pretty interesting and funny stuff that happened along the way. So at this point in time, the player characters had gone through the Cragmaw hideout and cleared out the Red Brand Marauders, or Red Brand Ruffians, sorry. And while they were clearing out the Red Brand's hideout, they rescued a human mother along with her two children, and the mother, in thanks, provided them with a location that they can explore to gain sort of a family heirloom as payment for saving them, in the ruined village of Thunder Tree. So the player characters ended up going there for this particular session. They also had the option of going into the sort of the more forbidding woods to seek out Agatha, the Spectre, not Spectre, sorry, the Banshee, as set out by the local temple in Phandalin, but they decided to do this particular one first. At the end of their experience with the Red Brand Ruffians, they knew that they were looking for a place known as Cragmaw Castle, and so they don't know where it is. They need to sort of find some information, and the idea is that they might find something along the way while they're doing some other things. So the characters at this point had reached 3rd level by the time they had cleared out the Red Brand's location. And the player characters in the group are a half-orc bard, a human cleric, a half-elf warlock with the fiendish pact, and a half-elf ranger. So as they were sort of going through Thunder Tree, they fought off a couple things. I had them face off against a like a shambling mound that they actually end up fighting and defeating, which is not one of the monsters in the adventure itself, but I wanted to do that rather than the twig blights, because the players had gone through in a different campaign, one that unfortunately we kind of got away from, but they had gone through the Sunless Citadel, so they had already fought twig blights, stuff like that. So I thought I would throw something a little bit different at them. Rather than have 4 or 6 of these twig blights, I just had them fight this shambling mound. But they go through that, they fight that encounter, and they fought some ash zombies as well, and they came across this old druid. And the old druid was willing to give them some information as to where the location of Cragmaw Castle was, if he was willing to help them. And so what he wanted to do was have a monster driven out of the abandoned wizard's tower in the village. And this is a relatively new group of players for the most part, but one of the things that I wanted to accomplish is just get them comfortable asking questions. So instead of telling them flat out what the creature was, I just said that he wanted them to clear out a monster that was living in the tower, and that this monster had drawn the attention of cultists, and if the monster goes, then the cultists will hopefully go away as well. So the players didn't actually ask for any clarification. They just decided that, yeah, they were gonna go do it. So as it turns out, the monster was actually a green dragon by the name of Venomfang. So as the player characters make their way there, our warlock has an imp familiar. So with his familiar, he's able to send it, off sort of on its own, and can see and hear through the imp's eyes and ears, sort of idea. So they actually sent the imp, who had turned invisible, into this tower. So there was the collapsed roof of the tower that he was able to sort of gain entrance into this wizard's tower sort of idea thing. And so the invisible imp flies down and finds the dragon's treasure hoard. So it just sees this great big pile of treasure, and they decide to have it keep going because there was another smaller building that's connected to the round tower itself. And all of a sudden, basically, this imp saw just this massive green, scaly, fanged creature, rear its head and just snaps its jaws and unfortunately kills the imp. So the player can essentially summon another one at some point. But the imp familiar was defeated, and the dragon, because the dragon has blind sight, so he doesn't actually need to rely on the invisibility of the imp, was pretty useless at this point. So the green dragon flies out, or emerges out through this out through the tower, and confronts the party. And the first thing that the dragon does, the dragon wins initiative, unfortunately. And so the dragon goes first. The players had arranged themselves on the mat, and unfortunately they were all in this nice little convenient clumped up area. So the first thing the dragon does is what most dragons typically would lead any fight off with, and it just shoots out his breath weapon. And the characters, 3 out of the 4 fail. Now, none of them are killed outright, mostly because I don't want to do that. In general, I don't like that idea, but 3 of the 4 characters were knocked unconscious, and the last remaining one was the human cleric, human cleric, I think she is. So, now at this point, I decided that, we'll have a little bit of an ex machina here, so I had the druid, who had initially asked the characters to take this task. He arrived, I think, on the 3rd round of combat. So in the first round, the dragon breathes, and the characters are knocked unconscious. On the 2nd round of combat, the cleric goes over and heals one of the characters. I can't honestly remember which one it was at this point, and the dragon doesn't get his breath weapon back, and unfortunately the dragon ends up missing with its attacks. I think it hit with 1, but it wasn't enough to actually knock. It hit with one of his claws, which is sort of its weakest attack, on the cleric, and wasn't able to knock the cleric out. And then after that, I did have the druid appear, and I gave the druid, I think it was 3 2nd level spell slots and 4 1st level spell slots, and just went around curing the characters, and actually got everybody back up and into the fight as the dragon. And these rolls were legit. Like, I have done a video in the past talking about sort of pulling the punches and having, hits that would wipe a party, or attacks that would do that, sort of pull the punches, but that wasn't the case in this particular situation. It was just, the fact was, I just wasn't rolling very well. With 3 attacks, there were more than once that the highest number I rolled was a 6, and it just wasn't enough to hit anybody. So the characters, keep getting knocked down. The druid ends up, healing some. The cleric uses all of their spells for healing, and in the meantime, the bard is unleashing dissonant whispers and spells along those lines against the dragon. Actually drives the dragon away for 1 round, which gives the players again a chance to sort of heal up once more. And he comes down. He's able to use his breath weapon 1 more time, but he only hits a couple of the characters. Again, knocks them down. And at one point, it comes down to 1 final character. So the cleric ends up going down. The warlock is down. The ranger is down. The druid was taken out by the breath weapon as well. All that's left is the half-orc bard. And the half-orc bard is out of spells, out of abilities. His Vicious Mockery is an all-or-nothing save. The dragon's actually looking pretty ragged at this point. By the time that this happened, the dragon only had, I think, like 2 hit points left. So in one last desperate act, the half-orc bard, I keep on calling him a barbarian, but the half-orc bard draws his rapier, and in desperation stabs at the dragon. And the rapier basically plunges into the dragon's eye, and he just digs it in deep, getting the dragon's blood all over the rapier itself, and does enough damage to kill it. So the bard ends up saving the day and landing the killing blow on the dragon. And it was a pretty epic fight, and something that the players really seemed to enjoy. Actually, they liked the lethality of it, the danger and the risk involved, and having that very real possibility that they were not going to make it. I mean, at one point, one of the final characters, or one of the characters that was knocked unconscious, was down to their, they had failed 2 death saving throws. They managed to get the cleric, the druid, up, and they were able to, again, so nobody actually ended up dying, but it was very, very close. It was very, very tense situation. And as a sort of reward to the half-orc, and because I think that there are things like this that could, be sort of a cool concept. He actually had it so that the dragon's blood, and dragons are known as like magical creatures, so the dragon's blood actually gets absorbed into the rapier, and the bard, as he just sort of picks up and swings this rapier around, notices that it's almost as if the weapon is guiding it, and so the rapier was now a named magic item by the name of Venom Fang. So I made it, and this is a homebrew thing, but I made it a +1 magical rapier that on a critical hit will do an extra, I think it's like 1d6 or 2d6 poison damage, because green dragons use, their breath weapon and stuff is poison damage. So that was sort of the reward for that, that combat, and for that, that last ditch effort, because the bard, I think, was down to just a couple of hit points. So if the bard got hit once, he was dead, and if the dragon got hit once more, it was dead. So it just sort of kind of worked out that the bard was the one that was able to hit, and withstood a barrage of snapping jaws and slashing claws, was able to dodge out of all of them, was lucky, or not necessarily lucky, but was very, very much benefited by being a half-orc, because at one point he would have been knocked into unconsciousness, save for the half-orc's ability to, the first time per day that they get knocked down to 0 hit points, they remain conscious at 1. So that saved the bard and led to this victory. So it was just sort of a really cool moment, and one that you could tell the players were really exhilarated when this happened. And just having the players say, "Wow, that was awesome," is something that it makes being a DM worth it. It's like, typically speaking, being a DM is kind of a thankless job. Although this group is pretty good about thanking me for running each session, but the bigger thanks for me is just hearing them explain how how much fun they had with that particular encounter, and how cool it was to have this magic item now. So anyway, I just thought I would share that story because it was something that had happened, and I thought it was it was a fun session. It was a really fun session to run. I really enjoyed the fact that the players got such a rise out of that particular encounter. So it actually makes me feel kind of good when it comes to, because I mentioned sort of in my Advanced Dungeons & Dragons video that when it comes to the players there with their very limited hit points and their only one single healing spell and stuff like that, that they tended to be a bit more cautious, or each hit that they sustained was something that you could tell was very like a tense situation while they waited for the damage to be rolled. And this kind of captured that, but not only did this encounter sort of encapsulate that as well, but the players responded favorably to the challenging situation. So that makes me, again, feel kind of good, because I like running these kinds of encounters. I want the players to survive, and I want them to continue on and progress through the story, but I want them to be challenged at the same time. And one of the concepts, or one of the things that gets said a lot about the more modern versions of D&D is that a lot of the difficulty gets taken away, and that the players aren't necessarily looking for that level of challenge anymore. So to have players respond well to that challenge in that near-death situation was a great feeling, and it was, again, a very fun encounter. And with the Venom Fang, I do actually want to make it into what they would have in 3rd edition be considered to be a legacy item, and have it be a magical weapon that can get more powerful as the character who's wielding it progresses in level as well. So that's sort of the idea for that. And the start is to have it deal the extra poison damage on a critical, and then we'll get to the point where it can deal poison damage on normal attacks, and I'll try to think of some other abilities to do with that as well. But anyway, that was just my experience with that particular encounter, and with that session of Lost Mine of Phandelver. If you want to hear some of the previous stories from this campaign, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to sort of talk about them, because there are some interesting things that had kind of occurred with one of the characters and the Unseen Servant spell, as well as interesting ways of navigating through encounter areas and stuff like that. So if you're interested in any more of the adventures, let me know, and I can kind of go back and start that from the beginning. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time. Take care.